Welcome to another tutorial for Craftar. Today we are going to look at how to build an API that can take Google News RSS and then add those news feeds to our Airtable. So let's see how it works. So first we'll need to get our RSS feed. So this is the RSS feed of Google News. So I'll just copy this URL. I'll go to Craftar, I'll right click and I'll search for RSS. So we have the block get data from RSS feed. So to this block we'll connect start to enter and then we'll give our URL here, and now we can press play. So once we press play we can see that we'll get our articles here, and now we have the articles. They have title, they have description, they have link, snippet and date. Okay, awesome. So now what we want to do, like we have around 38 articles, so we want to store them in Airtable. So we'll go and create an Airtable base. So I have already created an Airtable base, so I call it Google News RSS feed. My table is Google News articles and I have 5 columns. So the first column is link, which is URL. Then you have title, which is single line text. I have description, which is long text with enable rich formatting. I have snippet, which is long text, and then I have date, which is single line text. Okay, awesome. So now I have my Airtable base ready. So I need a way to convert these list of articles and store them in Airtable. So what we'll do, we'll search for Airtable, and I have this block add single record to Airtable. So what it does, it takes in the API key, base ID, table ID, and the record to add, like a single record, and it adds it to Airtable. Okay, so first let's get our API key. So I'll go to Airtable, I'll go to my account, and now inside my account I'll go to developer hub and we'll create a new token. So I'll say create new token, I'll give it a name, so I'll call it Craftar Google RSS feed, and then I'll give it scope. So I want to write to this base and maybe I'll want to read it later, so I'll give it both. And then I'll give it a base, so I'll search for Google and I'll give it Google News RSS feed. Now I'll press create token and I can copy my token here. Awesome. So my token is ready. I'll go to Craftar and I'll paste my API key here. Okay, great. So my API key is set up. Now I need my base ID and table ID. So the way to get it, we can just right click again and we'll search for Airtable. So we have this block get Airtable config from URL. So what this block does, it takes in the URL of my Airtable base and then it returns the base ID, table ID and view ID. Awesome. So I'll go to my Airtable. So this is my URL. I'll copy it. I'll come back here and paste my URL here. Okay, cool. And now I can connect my base ID to base and my table ID to table. Great. And obviously this block will run first and then we'll run this block. So we have this set up. Now we need to figure out how to get record to add, right? That's a single record, but here we have a list of records. So this is a great use case where we'll use loops. So we'll go through this list and for each item in list, we'll add that item to Airtable. Okay, so we'll right click, we'll go to logic and then loops, and we have this block loop each item in list. So I'll create this block and now we can look at it. So enter is where we'll enter this block. So I'll pass the exit of my RSS feed to my loops. So this is good. And then I need items to loop through. So I'll connect articles to items. So it will go through all of the items. And then we have on complete, which says what to do when the loop is complete. In this case, when the loop is completed, we just want to end our flow. So I'll connect it to outputs end. So this is good. And then on step indicates what to do for each item in the list. So for each item in the list, in our case, we want to add it to Airtable. So we'll connect it to this logic here. So for each item, we want this logic to run. So we want to get Airtable config from URL and then you want to add record to Airtable. So the record to add to Airtable will be inside a current item. So we'll connect it to record to add. So our current item would be, first time it will be this one, second time it will be the second record and so on, right? So for each it will go through. An index would be the current index that we are iterating on. So first it will be 0, then 1 till 38. Okay, great. So what happens is, first we'll get all data from RSS feed, and then for each of those items, we'll run this logic. We'll get records, get Airtable config, and then we'll add it to our Airtable. And then since there's nothing else to do, it will go back and repeat the on step again every time. And once all the steps are complete, it will go to on complete. Awesome. So now instead of like running it 38 times, what I can do, I can say, okay, start at 0th element, but end at 5. So we only want to store 5 items for now, for the sake of the demo. And step is 1. So these 3 values are optional. By default, start is 0, end is the length of the items, and step is 1. So what is step? So if I give 2, then it will take every second item starting from 0, right? So pretty similar to how loops work in a programming language. So by default value of step is 1. Okay, awesome. So now our flow is ready. We'll close these sidebars to make some space. We'll zoom in and now we can click play. So we get all of our articles. And now if we look at loop, so index 0 and current item is the first item. And we go and add to Airtable. And now if I open my Airtable, we should see our first record here. Okay, awesome. And we are continuing to add. So we are at index 2 right now. We added the 3rd record. Now we are adding the 4th record. And now we are adding the 5th record. And now since index is done, now it goes to on complete and my API is done. That's awesome. So our logic is working, and we can see in Airtable we got all the 5 records here. We got their snippets, their descriptions, and date, and so on. Okay, awesome. So now what we can do, so instead of like running it again here, we'll deploy it as an API. So we'll remove these values, we'll set them to default values. So what we want is we wanted to run it for all items in our RSS feed and add them to our Airtable. Great. So I'll save this and then I'll click on publish and I'll publish now. Okay, so now our API is done. So before we play, I'll just remove all these records so they don't get repeated again. And now I'll just play this as an API. It'll take some time. It's going through all the 38 records and done. So now if we go to our Airtable, we can see we got all of our 38 records here. Great. So we figured out how to build an API that takes data from any RSS feed, in our case Google News. It loops through all items in the record, and then for each item in RSS feed, it runs this logic. It gets the base ID table ID, and then it adds that record to Airtable. And once the loop is completed, we end our API execution. This was Craftar Loops, as well as going from RSS to Airtable. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.